Welcome back to A Twist of Faith. I'm your host, Alex Parkview. We're going to pick up in this episode with more of Earth, the Book of Belial, the Mastery of the Earth. Specifically, we're going to take a look at the ritual or intellectual decompression chamber and the ingredients used in the performance of Satanic Magic. So we have a couple to cover, both pretty short pieces. Time should flow nicely. I told you my boredom is your benefaction, honestly. Got my pipe issue resolved, just had to stay home because I wasn't sure what was going on with that. And my buddies that do the delivery stuff with me were like, hey, everything's still closed, so I have to go through a different route tomorrow when I do finally go back to work. But you will still get your episode tomorrow night because Wednesday is my guaranteed weekly episode drop. As I said, these are just your bonus ones. Get through the Satanic Bible a touch quicker than we would otherwise. So stick around. I'm going to grab a drink like I always do around this point for my throat because this is some thirsty work talking for half hour at a time. The ritual or intellectual decompression chamber. A magical ceremony may be performed by oneself or in a group, but the advantages of each should be made clear. A group ritual is certainly much more of a reinforcement of faith and an installation of power than is a private ceremony. The massing together of persons who are dedicated to a common philosophy is bound to ensure a renewal of confidence in the power of magic. The pageantry of religion is what has sustained it. When religion consistently becomes a solitary situation, it reaches into that realm of self-denial, which runs concurrent with antisocial behavior. It is for this reason that the Satanist should attempt to seek out others with whom to engage in these ceremonies. In the case of a curse or destruction ritual, it sometimes helps the magician if his desires are intensified by other members of the group. There is nothing in this type of ceremony which would lead to embarrassment on the part of those conducting a ritual of this sort, since anger and the symbolic destruction of the intended victim are the essential ingredients. On the other hand, a compassion ritual, with its unashamed shedding of tears, or a sex ritual, with its masturbatory and orgasmic overtones, would most likely succeed best if privately performed. There is no place for self-consciousness in the ritual chamber, unless that very self-consciousness is an integral part of the role being played and can be used to a good advantage, i.e., the shame felt by a prudent woman serving as an altar who through her embarrassment feels sexual stimulation. Even in a totally personalized ritual, however, the standardized preliminary invocations and devices should be employed before the intimate fantasies and acting out occur. The formal part of the ritual can be performed in the same room or chamber as the personalized working, or the formal ceremony in one place, the personal in another. The beginning and end of the ritual must be conducted within the confines of the ritual chamber containing the symbolic devices, altar, chalice, etc. The formalized beginning and end of the ceremony acts as a dogmatic, anti-intellectual device, the purpose of which is to dissociate the activities and frame of reference of the outside world from that of the ritual chamber, where the whole will must be employed. This facet of the ceremony is most important to the intellectual, as he especially requires the decompression chamber effect of the chants, bells, candles, and other trappings before he can put his pure and willful desires to work for himself in the projection and utilization of his imagery. The intellectual decompression chamber of the Satanist temple might be considered a training school for temporary ignorance, as are all religious services. The difference is that the Satanist knows he is practicing a form of contrived ignorance in order to expand his will, whereas another religionist doesn't, or if he does know, he practices that form of self-deceit which forbids such recognition. His ego is already too shaky from his religious inculcation to allow himself to admit such a thing as self-imposed ignorance. Now here, LaVey talks about the format, the basic layout of order of steps in a ritual for whatever you're doing, group versus solo. Again, it's kind of more rules, which I find amusing just because LaVey is Mr. No Rules, fuck it all. You're your own god in Satanism. Remember, there is no extra supernatural whatever. Like, all of it is just a show to be put on. And he talks about the theatrics a little bit, the rituals, the bells, the whistles, the chalices. Like, it's all just a show. Again, he's talking about dogma and performance as a way to impress upon people who might be observing. Oh, I cast the spell in my black room with the candles and the black flames and yada fucking whatever. Like, for a man who does not believe in supernatural things such as LaVey, to hear him set forth rules for the conduction of actions regarding supernatural things such as spell casting, etc., even though he acknowledges that it's just contrived and imposed ignorance, it amuses me. Not in like the, oh my god, I'm dying laughing, but in the ironic, are you fucking serious? Again, I think he's doing it more just to obtain followers. I mean, he strikes me from what I've read in the introduction, which I covered in a previous episode, by his magus, Peter, I forget his last name, Peter Gilmore. He strikes me as like the silver-tongued devil, air quotes around that, because like my dad always told me when I was a kid, he said, you could sell ice to an Eskimo. I feel like LaVey was that and then some, because he's so wishy-washy on what he actually believes in, or he presents it as being wishy-washy, that he's going to attract the people on either end of the spectrum, because it's just enough in their camp to where they're like, yeah, I can get behind that. It's not really a bad thing when you're trying to amass a huge following. Look at all the cult leaders, etc. I'm sure they had similar practices. But that kind of begs the question then, does Satanism fall more as a cult than a religion? I mean, from everything I've read, I would kind of say yes and no. Cult in the way he goes about getting his following. Religion in the way it gives you guidelines for life. Like the whole, you are your own God, fulfill your ego, your desires, fuck everybody else, nothing else matters. Like, he's playing cult and religion in the same grouping, is how it reads to me. And I mean, like I said, if you're trying to get a huge following, that's not necessarily the stupidest thing in the world to do. So I'll give props where they're due. I mean, I don't buy into it. Maybe my brain's just a little bigger than some of the people that he's trying to attract. I don't know. And I'm not trying to say I'm like this ultra intelligent whatever, but I'm able to see through his bullshit, I guess. So the next section, we're going to break down the different ingredients or components used in the performance of Satanic Magic. There's a few of them. There's desire, timing, imagery, direction, the balance factor, and it looks like the balance factor is the last one, so I'll touch on each one. As I do each, I will compound my thoughts regarding each before I move on to the next. That seems like the easiest way for the flow of it, so stick around for that. And now, through the magic of the podcast, as if no time at all had passed, on your end at least, the ingredients used in the performance of Satanic Magic. First, desire. The first ingredient in the performance of a ritual is desire, otherwise known as motivation, temptation, or emotional persuasion. If you do not truly desire any end result, you should not attempt to perform a working. There is no such thing as a practice working, and the only way that a magician could do tricks, such as moving inanimate objects, would be to have a strong emotional need to do so. It is true that if the magician wishes to gain power through impressing others with his feats of magic, he must produce tangible proof of his ability. The satanic concept of magic, however, fails to find gratification in the proving of magical prowess. The Satanist performs his ritual to ensure the outcome of his desires, and he would not waste his time nor force of will on something so inconclusive as rolling a pencil off a table, etc., through the application of magic. The amount of energy needed to levitate a teacup, genuinely, it's in parentheses there, would be of sufficient force to place an idea in a group of people's heads halfway across the earth, in turn motivating them in accordance with your will. If that works, everybody who's listening, cash at me $1. Cash at me $1. My cash tag is Alex Parkview. Cash at me $1 because LaVey said it works. The Satanist knows that even if you succeeded in lifting the teacup from the table, it would be assumed that trickery was used anyway. Therefore, if the Satanist wants to float objects in midair, he uses wires, mirrors, or other devices, and saves his force for self-aggrandizement. All gifted mediums and white light mystics practice pure and applied stage magic. With their blindfolds and sealed envelopes, and any fairly competent stage magician, carnival worker, or lodge hall entertainer can duplicate the same effect, although lacking perhaps the sanctimonious spiritual overtones. A little child learns that if he wishes for something hard enough, it will come true. This is meaningful. Wishing indicates desire, whereas prayer is accompanied by apprehension. Scripture has twisted desire into lust, covetousness, and greed. Be as a child and do not stifle desire, lest you lose touch with the first ingredient in the performance of magic. Be led into temptation and take that which tempts whenever you can. Again, that was the first of his ingredients or components in the performance of Satanic Magic, the desire factor, I will call it or refer to it as. Like I said, basically, he's just saying because of the energy used, the Satanist is going to basically employ stage tricks. Kind of makes it sound like maybe he doesn't believe that magic is real, because why would I attempt real magic when I can achieve the same result through trickery and deception? I mean, he talks about basically being able to plant ideas in and control people's mind if your desire is strong enough. Whether or not he believed that, we can't know other than what he wrote, because, hell, he's dead, so can't really answer much of anything, so I just have to draw conclusions based on the works. Like I said, I'm channeling all my energy right now. Cash at me $1. Every one of you, cash at me $1. Or if you're a South Park fan, I need about Tree Fitty. I promise I'm not the Loch Ness Monster, though. I don't understand. He's basically saying, like, to do magic, you have to want things. You have to want an outcome. But then he's saying, to achieve the outcome, don't waste your energy and just use trickery. It seems kind of, again, wishy-washy in that LaVeyan sense of the term to me. So we'll see if he has anything else to say on that. Moving on to the second component of Satanic Magic is timing. In every successful situation, one of the most important ingredients is the proper timing. In the performance of a magical ritual, timing can mean success or failure to an even greater extent. The best time to cast your spell or charm, hex or curse, is when your target is at his most receptive state. Receptivity to the will of the magician is assured when the recipient is as passive as possible. No matter how strong-willed one is, he is naturally passive while he is asleep. Therefore, the best time to throw your magical energy towards your target is when he or she sleeps. There are certain periods of the sleep cycle that are better than others for susceptibility to outside influences. When a person is normally fatigued from a day's activities, he will sleep like a log until his mind and body are restored. This period of profound sleep usually lasts about 4 to 6 hours, after which the period of dream sleep occurs, which lasts 2 or 3 hours or until awakening. It is during this dream sleep that the mind is most receptive to outside or unconscious influence. Quick note there, just because it bugs me that he uses the stupid quotes and what he wants to call them. The sleep like a log period is called deep sleep. That's literally the term for it. And then the dream sleep is your REM cycle sleep when you're dreaming. So, yeah. Way to stray from scientific terminologies and throw air quotes around what you wanted to call shit, LaVey. Let us assume the magician wishes to cast a spell on a person who would usually retire at 11 o'clock in the evening, 2300 for my military folks. and rise at 7 o'clock in the morning, 0700, again for my military folks. The most effective time to perform a ritual would be about 0500, or 5 o'clock in the morning, or 2 hours before the recipient awakens. It is to be emphasized that the magician must be at his peak of efficiency, as he represents the sending factor when he performs his ritual. Traditionally speaking, witches and sorcerers are night people, and understandably so. What better schedule on which to live for the sending of thoughts towards unsuspecting sleepers? If only people were aware of the thoughts injected into their minds while they slept. The dream state is the birthplace of much of the future. Great thoughts are manifest upon awakening, and the mind that retains in conscious form these thoughts shall produce much. But he who is guided by thoughts unrecognized is led into situations that will later be interpreted as fate, God's will, or accidents. There are other times in each person's day that lend themselves to the receiving of the will of the wizard. Those times when daydreaming or boredom ensue, or when time hangs heavy, are fertile periods of suggestibility. If a woman is the target for your spell, do not forget the importance of the menstrual cycle. If man were not dulled through his stifling evolutionary development, he would know, as an all-fours animal knows, when the female was most sexually inclined. Man's snout, however unsullied by cheap opiates, is not normally equipped to ferret out such telltale erotic scents. Even if he were so endowed with such olfactory powers, the ability to smell, olfactory is a sense of smell, the object of his quest would most likely throw him off the scent through the use of massive doses of perfumery, or douching, to cover and smother the offending effluvium, or eliminate detection completely by the astringent action of powerful deodorants. Again, more douching, basically. Like LaVey is just all about don't douche because I want to know when you're on your period, I guess. But I will pause really briefly here just to say LaVey was onto something with the importance of the menstrual cycle. And I'm not talking from a spell casting sense. Like, the menstrual cycle of a female, it goes on like a month long. You think of the period, the menstrual cycle, you think of the week when they're shedding the dead cells, the dead egg, whatever, from the ovary. But the cycle as a whole is so much more than just that. And at various points throughout the cycle, there's different hormones involved. There's different moods as a result of the influx or decrease of hormones. So there is definitely a lot to the menstrual cycle as far as a female and her bodily makeup, her energies, her moods, etc. So he was onto something in that. The menstrual cycle plays a very large role that I don't think anybody is at a full understanding of at this point in time. There are people trying, but we can only ferret out what we can ferret out, basically. Despite these discouraging factors, man is still motivated to desire or be repelled, as the case may be, by his unconscious recognition of the change in woman's body chemistry. This is accomplished in the form of a sensory cue, which is olfactory in its nature. To go backwards, in what would amount to a return to the all-fours animal, would seem to be the best exercise for the conscious application of these powers, but to the squeamish might smack of lycanthropy. There is, however, an easier way, and that is to simply ascertain the dates and frequency of the menstrual cycle of the woman who is your target. It is immediately before and after the period itself that the average woman is most sexually approachable. Therefore, the magician will find the sleep period during these times most effective for the installation of thoughts or motivations of a sexual nature. Witches and sorceresses have a much greater range of time in which to cast their spells toward the men of their choice, because man is more consistent in his sexual drives than women. Although there are many women with equal or even greater lusts, day-to-day timing is not as important. Any man who is not already drained of all sexual energy is a sitting duck for the proficient witch. The time of year following the spring equinox is the most fraught with sexual vigor in a man, and he asserts himself accordingly. But the witch, in turn, must work her magic stronger, as she will find his eyes will stray. Should the fearful ask, is there no defense against such witchery? It must be answered thus. Yes, there is protection. You must never sleep, never daydream, never be without a vital thought, and never have an open mind. Then you shall be protected from the forces of magic. Now, on top of his bit about menstruation there, like I said, that's actually, he's on to something as far as the female body makeup composition. But he talks about men being horn dogs and therefore easier, etc. So again, not directly, but reading between the lines, LaVey's basically saying if your sexual energy is not spent, you're a sitting duck. Well, guess what? In satanic LaVeyan terms, he is once again indirectly, this time, encouraging you to, quote, rub one out. That's right. LaVey, yet again, is all about if you don't want to be sexually susceptible to dark influence of magic workings, just masturbate a lot. Because the more you masturbate, the more fulfilled you are, the less likely you are to care about any of the sexual energy, and the less likely it is to affect your body. I mean, even when he's not telling you to masturbate, he's telling you to masturbate. I think maybe LaVey had a little bit of a masturbation obsession. Just a thought. The next one that we're going to tackle is going to be imagery. Moving on to the third component, imagery. Why don't we take a look and see what kind of picture LaVey paints with imagery? The adolescent boy who takes great care in carving on a tree, a heart containing his and his love object's initials, the little chap who sits by the hour drawing his conception of sleek automobiles, the tiny girl who rocks a scuffed and ragged doll in her arms and thinks of it as her beautiful little baby. These capable witches and warlocks, these natural magicians, are employing the magical ingredient known as imagery, and the success of any ritual depends on it. Children, not knowing nor caring if they possess artistic skill or other creative talents, pursue their goals through the use of imagery of their own manufacture, whereas civilized adults are much more critical of their own creative efforts. This is why a primitive magician can utilize a mud doll or crude drawing to successful advantage in his magical ceremonies. To him, the image is as accurate as it needs to be. Anything which serves to intensify the emotions during a ritual will contribute to its success. Any drawing, painting, sculpture, writing, photograph, article of clothing, scent, sound, music, tableau, or contrived situation that can be incorporated into the ceremony will serve the sorcerer well. Imagery is a constant reminder, an intellect-saving device, a working substitute for the real thing. Imagery can be manipulated, set up, modified, and created, all according to the will of the magician. And the very blueprint that is created by imagery becomes the formula which leads to reality. If you wish to enjoy sexual pleasures with the one of your choice, you must create the situation you desire on paper, canvas, by the written word, etc., in as overstated a way as possible, as an integral part of the ceremony. If you have material desires, you must gaze upon images of them, surround yourself with the smells and sounds conducive to them, create a lodestone which will attract the situation or thing that you wish. To ensure the destruction of an enemy, you must destroy them by proxy. They must be shot, stabbed, sickened, burned, smashed, drowned, or rent in the most vividly convincing manner. It is easy to see why the religions of the right-hand path frown upon the creation of graven images. The imagery used by the sorcerer is a working mechanism for material reality, which is totally opposed to esoteric spirituality. A Greek gentleman of magical persuasion once wanted a woman who would satisfy his every desire, and so obsessed with the unfound object of his dreams was he, that he went about constructing such a wonderful creature. His work completed, he fell so convincingly and irrevocably in love with the woman he had created that she was no longer stone, but mortal flesh, and alive and warm. And so the Magus, Pygmalion, received the greatest of magical benedictions, and the beautiful Galatea was his. Now, that's a pretty short component description as far as what LaVey's talking about in this chapter with imagery. But I love, like, kudos, full round of applause to LaVey. Love that he went to Greek mythology, because that's one of my favorite things. The stories of Greek mythology are some of the best I've written, in my humble opinion. I love Greek mythology, and I'm very familiar with the story of Pygmalion, and he falls in love with the statue. LaVey leaves out some parts. I want to say it's Athena, might be Artemis, don't quote me, but there's a goddess that grants him the life of the statue because he is so madly in love with it. There's something else to the story too, a bit of a sad note if memory serves. Again, don't quote me, I was like 10 when I went through my last book on Greek mythology. But I love that he dips into that and says that, like, because it was in a religious context of Greek mythology, Mr. LaVey here, who doesn't believe in gods, who doesn't believe in any of this shit, because you're your own god, remember, this is Satanism. Mr. LaVey says, well, the gods and goddesses in Greek mythology made him have his heart's desire because he was so obsessed with it. He created such beautiful imagery. But that doesn't go along with Satanism, because Satanism doesn't believe that those gods, goddesses, those supernatural powers exist. I love the Greek mythology. I think LaVey kind of struck himself out on using Greek mythology for Satanism. Like I said, I get he's using the example, but it doesn't go along with his teachings. And he's talking about in your spell casting, let's go with like little boys and their fucking heart's desires. Every boy had a crush on a supermodel at some point growing up. And if not, then holy fuck, I need to meet the kid that didn't. But, like, we'll say Cindy Crawford, Kathy Ireland. I may be dating myself chronologically, but they're older examples from my generation's upbringing. And, you know, the bedroom was covered in the posters of the supermodels. So, according to LaVey, had I known then of his magical satanic workings, I could have manifested Cindy Crawford or Kathy Ireland into my actual bed. It's a nice fucking pipe dream, but I just don't see it working. Like, reality, folks, reality. LaVey likes to escape reality through the use of his version of reality. So he uses, quote, reality to escape, quote, reality. It's, I don't know, it's LaVey, like, through and through. Again, it's that cult versus religion thing. It sounds so appealing that it makes you want to join, but if you really take the time to break it down and analyze it, it just contradicts itself at almost every turn. Again, very fond of the example he chose of Greek mythology, but that in and of itself goes against Satanism. Great story, great Greek myth. The Satanists should not believe that based on LaVey's teaching, because there's no supernatural anything. They are their own god. It's all about what they can get in life. So, kind of struck out there on that one, LaVey. You kind of blew it. I'm sure some people still love you, but you kind of blew it. The fourth component that LaVey mentions is direction. One of the most overlooked ingredients in the working of magic is the accumulation and subsequent direction of force toward an effective end. Altogether, too many would-be witches and warlocks will perform a ritual and then go about with tremendous anxiety waiting for the first sign of a successful working. For all intent and purpose, they might as well get down on their knees and pray, for their very anxiety in waiting for the desired results only nullifies any real chance of success. Furthermore, with this attitude, it is doubtful that enough concentrated energy to even perform a proper ceremony could be stored up in the first place. To dwell upon or constantly complain about the situation upon which your ritual would be based only guarantees the weakening of what should be ritualistically directed force by spreading it thin and diluting it. Once the desire has been established strongly enough to employ the forces of magic, then every attempt must be made to symbolically give vent to these wishes in the performance of the ritual, not before or after. The purpose of the ritual is to free the magician from thoughts that would consume him, were he to dwell upon them constantly. Contemplation, daydreaming, and constant scheming burns up emotional energy that could be gathered together in a dynamically usable force, not to mention the fact that normal productivity is severely depleted by such consuming anxiety. The witch who casts her spells between long waits by the telephone, anticipating her would-be lover's call, the destitute warlock who invokes Satan's blessing, then waits on pins and needles for the check to arrive, the man saddened by the injustices wrought upon him, who, having cursed his enemy, plods his way, long of face and furrowed of brow, all are common examples of misdirected emotional energy. Small wonder that the white magician fears retribution after casting an evil spell. Retribution to the guilt-ridden sender would be assured by their very conscience-stricken state. Now, this bit I can agree with, not necessarily in the framework of spells and magic, but like the direction of thoughts. Like, he's saying if you believe strongly enough in something, you just do it and move on. You don't sit there and like stare out the window. The image that pops to head, like the kid waiting for Santa Claus when they're little. Like you don't sit there and wait. You just know it's going to happen. Like as a kid, you know the presents are going to be there Christmas morning. So you don't sit up all night waiting for Santa to show up because you know that you're going to get the desired result of Santa. Like if that makes sense in a comparative manner. It does to me, like, but it's my brain. So, but like say I were to work a satanic magic spell, whatever, and it was to get, we'll just go back to my previous example, we'll say Kathy Ireland. So I cast this working to get Kathy Ireland in my bed, right? And then I'm like, well, still, she's not in my bed. Where's Kathy Ireland? Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? According to LaVey, the reason she's not appearing in my bed is because I'm questioning my ability by wondering why she's not there. Where is she? I mean, it's kind of a nice escape for LaVey to use here, like, because he could tell someone, well, your spell would have worked, but like it gives him that out, that escape clause. It's not that what I'm telling you is wrong. It's that you don't believe enough. It's that you're misdirected. You're too anxious. You didn't do the working properly. So, I mean, it's very clever of him to work that into the spell components. But at the same time, I do kind of agree with focusing your energy and just moving on. Again, not in the spell or ritualistic sense where I'm coming from. Like, if you want something, fucking put your energy into it, but don't dwell on the why. Just work towards it and it'll happen. Like, you should just know it's going to happen because you're putting in the work, I guess. So this one's kind of a wash. Like, I agree, but not in the sense he's describing it. But it was very clever of him to mention it in this whole subject matter of spells and rituals because, like I said, it gives him that escape clause. If somebody comes to him and says, well, I read your Bible, I did what you said to do, but still nothing happened, I didn't get my desired thing, then LaVey can just go back on what he wrote and say, well, you probably just misdirected energy, fucked it up because you were too anxious, blah, blah, blah. So very clever placement on his part. Does have real world applications, I believe, but not in and of itself just a satanic thing or a spellcasting thing. We have one more section to cover, one component, and that is the balance factor. The final component in the performance of satanic magic is the balance factor. The balance factor is an ingredient employed in the practice of ritual magic, which applies to the casting of lust and compassion rituals more than in the throwing of a curse. This ingredient is a small but extremely important one. A complete knowledge and awareness of this factor is an ability few witches and warlocks ever attain. This is simply knowing the proper type of individual and situation to work your magic on for the easiest and best results. Knowing one's own limitations is a rather odd bit of introspection, but it would seem for a person who should be able to perform the impossible, many conditions can make the difference between success and failure. If, in attempting to attain your goal through either greater or lesser magic, you find yourself failing consistently, think about these things. Have you been the victim of a misdirected, overblown ego which has caused you to want something or someone when the chances are virtually non existent? Are you a talentless, tone deaf individual who is attempting through magic to receive great acclaim for your unmusical voice? Are you a plain, glamourless witch with oversized feet, nose, and ego, combined with an advanced case of acne, who's casting love spells to catch a handsome young movie star? Are you a gross, lumpy, lewd-mouthed, snaggle-toothed loafer who is desirous of a luscious young stripper? If so, you'd better learn to use the balance factor, or else expect to fail consistently. To be able to adjust one's wants to one's capabilities is a great talent, and too many people fail to realize that if they are unable to attain the maximum, a half a loaf can be better than none. The chronic loser is always the man who, having nothing, if unable to make $1,000,000, will reject any chance to make 50,000 with a disgruntled sneer. One of the magician's greatest weapons is knowing himself, his talents, abilities, physical attractions and detractions, etc., and when, where, and with whom to utilize them. The man with nothing to offer who approaches the man who is successful with grandiose advice and promise of great wealth has the alacrity of the flea climbing up the elephant's leg with the intention of rape. The aspiring witch who deludes herself into thinking that a powerful enough working will always succeed, despite a magical imbalance, is forgetting one essential rule. Magic is like nature itself, and success in magic requires working in harmony with nature, not against it. Again, this goes very much with the misdirection component that we just talked about. LaVey is basically like giving himself that escape clause. Why didn't my magic work? Because you're a chud and you were trying to hook up with a supermodel, kid. Why didn't money just magically come to me like I expected it to? Because you just don't know enough about your own limitations and your expectations are too high. I mean, we'll go with the physical, the sex thing again, right? LaVey is basically saying you can spell people to get them to have sex with you, is summed up nutshell for his belief on that. But going back to my example of the kid with the supermodel, he's basically saying that you have about as much chance, spell or not, of getting Kathy Ireland into your bed naked with her fucking legs spread for you as you do of winning $1,000,000 in the lottery without buying a fucking ticket. It's just not going to happen. And then in this, the balance factor, he brings up, well, you should look at what you're capable of. Okay, so forget the supermodel. I'm just going to go with the chick who fucking spreads it for everybody, believes that everybody loves her, that basically has 5,000 children by 5,000 different men, or more abortions than hunters have confirmed kills. He's saying, if you can't get the supermodel, just go for the whore, because at least if you work your magic on a whore, you're going to get the result you want. That's God. LaVey is just, he's almost mocking people at this point who choose to believe in him. Oh, I've read all this great stuff about spells and I can make this happen, except I'm shooting too high, I'm aiming too high, so I gotta take myself down a few pegs. The fuck? If you're the spellcaster, you should be able to net fucking Kathy Ireland the $1,000,000. You shouldn't have to rely on a fucking village bicycle that everyone's had to ride to be able to have your working of magic be a success and getting you laid, if that is how you choose to go about the matter. He gives himself so many outs to the doubters, the failures, the wannabes, the acolytes in training that just can't understand why they can't make things happen. Because you're not good enough, your energy's misdirected, you're ugly, etc. You heard the list of insults there at the end of that. Jesus, man. And I'm not saying Jesus in the religious sense, just in the Jesus, man. Holy fuck. You can cast whatever spells you want. They're not going to work, but I'm not going to tell you that. Instead, I'm going to tell you it's because you suck at casting them because of this, and this. He's basically just pointing out fucking people for being the chumps that they are. Like, he's basically saying, if you believe me, you deserve what you get. I mean, that's not a great way to keep followers, but it's very clever in that he gives himself the out. He gives himself the escape. I'm willing to bet it's only people of like limited intellect that really buy into all of his stuff, because he gives himself so many outs for when things go wrong or fail. Be back right after this with a quick conclusion. We went a little over this week because of all the components for the ritualistic whatevers in Satanism, but I wanted to cover each one on its own merits, not like losing or forgetting any individual thing. So we'll be back with a quick conclusion, and then I will see y'all tomorrow when I do my Wednesday drop for the podcast. All right, this has been A Twist of Faith. I'm your host, Alex Parkview. As always, today we covered all the different components of a satanic ritual as far as the ingredients that are necessary for the completion, with my usual thoughts about each afterwards. Tomorrow's episode, we're actually going to see a breakdown, step-by-step layout of a satanic ritual. Maybe LaVey will be able to convince me of otherwise, that I have not currently been in agreement with him. Maybe tomorrow, as I go through it, I'll change my mind. Highly doubtful, though. So I'm just going to close and say, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, share, comment. If you watch us on YouTube, you have the comments right there. You can interact as you listen. I'm not sure how it works if you're listening to me on just like a regular thing, but I know there's, depending on what you listen through, what platform, there's spots to leave comments, ratings, reviews, etc. As always, you can hit me up for love mail, hate mail, correspondence, whatever the fuck you want, at twistoffaithpodcast@gmail.com. I will do my best to return all correspondence. I may feature some love mail, hate mail if I get any. And we will pick up tomorrow with the actual step-by-step breakdown of a satanic ritual and components, etc. And that'll actually take us out of the book of Belial. Like I said, the longest book was the book of Lucifer, the Enlightenment. But yeah, we're moving on at a nice clip. So tune in for the next episode. Catch up on the rest of the episodes during this taint of the holidays, as I have affectionately began to call it. It's not a holiday, but you got one coming up, so you're right there in the taint. This has been A Twist of Faith. I'm your host, Alex Parkview. Thank you for tuning in. I do this to amuse myself and for y'all's benefit, so hopefully you're getting something from these episodes.